I have to stop going back to you. Back to you. Back to you. Back to you. I have to stop going back to you. Back to you. Back to you. Back to you. To you, to you, to you, back to you, I have to stop going back to you, to you, to you, back to you, I have to stop going back to you, to you, to you, back to you, I have to stop going back to you, to you, to you, back to you, I have to stop going back. Back to you. 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 I like to start going back. Back to you.
Happy Saturday, SMITE fans. You are watching the North American SCC. My name is Dolson. Gormiser is here with me to start off this fine Saturday of SMITE action. Gore, we've got the SCC this morning, SPL, a couple games later on. Plenty to look forward to here. But really, this first matchup in the SCC matchup, we've got Just F6 versus Clay Soldiers. A couple teams that need to get some momentum going here in the SCC.
Yeah, I've been, I think, very impressed with certain members of Just F6. Again, 3 of them having kind of been this team that had played together, Roulat and Lestimix, these guys who a few weeks ago I didn't know. And admittedly, like, they have not necessarily had, I think, the performance they would like. They definitely have been able to come through. And like you said, even though things need to kind of get the ball rolling, they've been playing a lot better than I expected. Sergazek, Sibi, Farrakrick, Agent, Kaspanify, those members on Clay Soldiers. I'll admit, I've kind of expected a little more out of a team like that. They just seem like they should be able to do a lot. They're only 1-1, so it's not necessarily the end of the world, but I really do expect this one to be more proving for Clay Soldiers, whereas Just F6, like you said, are looking for that bounce back.
Well, I got it all topsy-turvy since we're doing one EU today and then one North America tomorrow before the SPL, so we are over in the European SCC, and that makes it even more so important, Gore, I think, for Just F6 to find a win here today, and for Clay Soldiers as well. If Clay Soldiers find a win, Gore, we have 4 teams suddenly tied for that top spot, and then if Just F6 finds a win, we have a little bit of a sandwich going on there towards the middle. So this European SCC, I mean, North America is much the same as well, so I think the same argument can apply there that applies here, but this has just been so competitive. Gore, I mean, last year it kind of felt like everyone was chasing belt slap for one of those spots in the playoff events and the tournament events towards the end. It feels like it's anyone's game at this point, which makes it, I think, even more intense and even more important for this Just F6 squad to find a win today. I mean, they've got a good roster. Toddy, Rotwin, Sotos, Roulat, Lestimix. I mean, this is a group that, again, even though they're 0-2, have shown some promise, have shown that they have the ability to compete with teams at this level.
Yeah, and this is a team that, like you said, I've kind of been impressed with more or less out of the jungle and solo lane. I didn't know what to expect out of them coming into the SEC, and again, they're 0-2, but they have had some really solid games so far. And when you look at, like you said, the rest of it, specifically Toddy over there, Rotwin over there, you look at these frontliners, there's definitely a lot of good play and capability for good play, even though we haven't quite seen that come to fruition. I mean, even right here, like, it looks really solid, even though their Titan is currently dying, right? Like, there's only so much that you can do in a scenario like that, and you still were able to keep it pretty close. And plus, they've been going up against some of the hardest teams. I think that's the biggest thing, is everybody's so close right now, and I think that not only is it keeping it competitive, as you had mentioned, but it's because no one has had that breakout moment. Like, Elysium seemed like the team that was going to be the ones that just absolutely jumped forward and far between and nobody else able to catch them. And then Accounting Department keeps up with them. And then Pandemonium's keeping up with them. That's Snake Hunters, Clay Soldiers are down here, you know, giving a lot of competition to this Just F6 team. And that is where it comes back into this, where they have to win a set like this if you're Just F6, because you don't want to really set yourself that far behind. You're already 0-2, but like you had said, if they win this one and then it's, you know, a bunch of 2-1s, a bunch of 1-2s down at the bottom, split 3-3, if you go 0-3, it's more difficult to bounce back. And again, those top 2 slots are what matters most for everybody at the end of the phase right now. That's where you're shooting for. That's where you want to be. And if you go 0-3, it's not necessarily impossible, but it becomes a lot more difficult for you. You have to start winning a lot more, I would argue, challenging matches later on than what you have to deal with right now.
So it's not do or die just yet for this Just F6 team, but we're getting close. As you need to start getting some wins here going towards the end of what will be the first phase. Their opponents today, the Clay Soldiers, a team that's right towards the middle of the pack here, Gore, if there is one, again, with how sandwiched everything seems to be right now. Kaspanify, Agent, Farrakrick, Sorega, and Sibi. And this is a team that has won some of their matchup, or one of their matchups at least, and I think that's an important takeaway, where we're getting a win with how competitive the EU SEC has been. I think even more so impressive. Agent has looked great out of this support role, obviously playing a little bit of flexibility in that role. But I think Sibi as well, out of that solo lane, has really been a driving force for this team.
Yeah, I honestly really look at this team as something that needs a little bit more of a warm-up, right? It does still feel weird to me. It's been a while now, but every time I think of Spanify, I think Fusify should be right there next to him, but Agent has been doing a wonderful job making sure that this carry is able to have, I want to say, the full effect. I mean, 4-1-8 here just in that highlight and doing incredibly well as time goes on. Ferricrik, Sergazek, Sibi, like we've seen every one of these players on Clay Soldiers find success throughout their careers, right? It's just making sure it all works together and as a team here. Serga as well has been having, I want to say, a little bit of a slow start into the jungle. Not necessarily as bad as week one. Like week one, I think he was up against Adapting. Didn't really have much to do there, and admittedly, that's a hard matchup. But as the weeks go on, I want to see a little bit more from the jungle every time. It's just a little taste to see what he can do.
Well, especially with what we saw yesterday in the SPL, the jungler that got off to a hot start tended to help snowball that game pretty consistently in the couple of sets we had yesterday. Picks and bans for game number 1 between Clay Soldiers and Just F6. Gore, I'm interested, though, as the weeks go on, how we'll start to see kind of meta shift from SPL down to SCC, because admittedly, what we saw in the SPL yesterday, obviously there was some God carryover from the SCC up to the SPL, or SPL down to the SCC, however you want to look at it, but I feel like there were a few standout differences. I think Persephone was looked at a little bit more favorably at the SPL level. People were loving Ymir at a rate that I did not expect, so you wonder when kind of the saltwater and the freshwater start to combine into this one big competitive meta once both scenes have been able to see one another play a little bit more.
And it's going to be interesting because, like you said, with the SBL, like there's still some teams that are predominantly European, right? So they're going to focus more on some EU meta styles. Maybe that's going to be a big, like, dynamic shift. And I'm kind of curious, outside of the regular bans we've already seen, if anything like that is going to take precedent. Because, I mean, look, I see a Ratatosker ban. That is honestly just because Roulat looked good on it. Normally, I would say, oh, well, everybody's banning it because they see what Lasber can do. It's like, no. Roulat played really well on that last week, and so it makes sense to try and take that one away. Same thing for, like, the tier has been very, very prominent over here. I think this is interesting to see because, like you said, for the most part, I would argue 3 of these bans, maybe 4 of these bans, are staples, whereas 2 of them feel like flavor picks.
Yeah, sure do, don't they? One thing that is a staple here at Goremizer is the Athena pick. That is something that we saw pretty heavily at the SPL level when available, at least yesterday, and continues to do so here in the European SCC. Athena first locked in. Chernobog as well has kind of become a fan favorite hunter as Apollo became more popular. Chernobog was able to keep up with a lot of that global pressure. But Gore, it just kind of feels like what we've seen, and obviously this is just an overarching, maybe too general of a statement, but it just kind of feels like whatever team's got the Athena is immediately at an advantage more so than maybe any other god.
If your support player has spent enough time playing Athena, then I can guarantee they're going to hit nice 2-3-man taunts, like crucial taunts in the middle of it. Because that's the biggest thing when it comes to playing, I think, as a support for Athena. And granted, we've seen her go solo, we've seen her go jungle as well. So very flexible and versatile, doesn't necessarily have to be over there. Although with Guan Yu locked in, it definitely starts to limit it to one side of the map. And what we've seen specifically out of, well, I was going to say Agent, this would be Rotwin picking it up for Just F6. But it works pretty well over there in the duo lane. And realistically, the thing is, you learn when a good taunt is, right? Like, you're not always just, hey, I'm going to go in and taunt. Sometimes you don't want it at the very beginning of the fight. Most of the time you do. If I see, I'm going to use this as an example. It's not the same team here, but like if I have a Scylla on my team, if I can get everybody into that crush, that's exactly what I want to do. But those team fight taunts a little bit later, like 2, 3, 4 minutes into a team fight, that's way too long. 30 seconds to a minute into a team fight.
That was a long team fight.
Yeah, 30 seconds to like a minute into a team fight. The ones when it's coming off cooldown and you're getting like your second, your third, your fourth taunt, those are the ones that I think are really crucial, and that's what I'm going to keep my eye on here for Just F6.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's that hesitancy to be able to go in, delay just a little bit, find the right taunt instead of the first taunt, is what separates good Athenas from less good Athenas. We'll follow up, though, with a couple of the bans. Catch up there. Hunbats and Tsukiyomi both taken off the table, so Clay Soldier sensing that those 2 assassins might be ever so important in rounding out this Just F6 draft. On the other side, Set and Cerberus are gone. Kilcullen has become very popular in the early season here in Season 8 as dominating over in that solo lane. very difficult matchup for a lot of gods into that pick. Geb, though, Gormizer admittedly did not expect to see that here. Apparently 2 games played over in the EU SCC, but yet to find himself a win.
Not only 2 games played, if I remember correctly, he was top pick in those 2 games, right? Like, I mean, he was somebody that was not really looked at, and still, since then, hasn't been looked at, but he's been locked in. The same thing with the Zeus. Like, these bottom 2, look, you cover up those bottom 2, and that Just F6 draft is fantastic. You add Geb, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but you really start to look at stuff. Zeus is the wild card in this one. I think, and this is just going to be me going out on a limb, no matter where they send it, Geb obviously support, but Athena and Guan able to swap it and flex wherever they want, both into the jungle, both into the solo. But Apollo and Zeus are going to be so well protected this game. They're going to get healed. They're going to get taunts to repeal. They're going to have slow setup. They're going to have Geb shields. Like, it's going to be very difficult to kill them off, even though Zeus, I would argue, is one of the easiest to kill gods in the game because he's not going to get away from you that fast. He doesn't, even with boots, all the movement speed in the world, that guy's not zooming anywhere. His lightning is the only thing that can really travel faster. And so I think this is something that the damage numbers for Just F6, depending on how this mid lane goes, is going to rely heavily on the Apollo. I'm just excited to see it. I love seeing Zeus, and if he can work out, all more the power to you.
Right, I mean, he will do serious burst damage to you. He's immobile, and he's easy to jump on, and there are a couple people on Clay Soldiers that I'm nervous about if I'm the Zeus. This Sobek, Cullen, Erlang, Shen, they want to walk at you, and they want to pull you in, and they want to delete you, and Scylla is very good at deleting you quickly. So this really does feel like a game of protect the Zeus, and if you're Clay Soldiers, can we get to the Zeus? Do you think Clay Soldiers got a shot at getting into that backline? Well, Gore, I'm not going to give you a chance to answer because we're going to find out in real time. Game number 1 between Just F6 and Clay Soldiers starts now.
Thank you, Dolson and Gormizer. Finch and Miff here as we do indeed move into this game number 1, where Sodos on this Zeus, I think they were right to focus on it, has a lot to live up to here in this draft. Plenty of tanks around him, though. Just got to make sure he can survive the pressure, because there will be pressure. Miff, do you like it here? Can they make it work with this many tools around him, or does a more traditional, highly picked mage right about now take a lot of the question marks out of what should have been a killer draft?
Well, yes to that last bit right there, Finch. Had he just played a better mage, we wouldn't even have the chance to talk about it, but it's just crazy to me that they get the top 3 picks that they do, Just F6 that is. Apollo, Guan Yu, and Athena, all picks that get banned in the first phase that we saw yesterday in the SPL, and they decide to potentially fumble the bag a little bit with this Zeus lock-in, especially considering what the Clay Soldiers are bringing with their draft. I mean, Dave and Gore did a really good job of highlighting how good the dive is for the Chaos team, but I'm just going to say the god names again because I can. Cullen, Erlang, Shen, and Sobek are going to have a very easy target to gun down.
This Sobek can have, or rather, this Zeus can have the work cut out for him in terms of response. Gone with this restored artifact start, which you do see on these mid-mages sometimes. It's Sands of Time over there for Ferrocrick as his beginning, so no starter for this Zeus. We might end up seeing take something like that Sundering Axe later on. Survivability going to be key for him, so we'll keep our eye on what he elects to pick up. But man, this Athena has just become a dominant pick, hasn't it? Not so dominant that it gets banned all the time, I'd say, but you can throw it in the jungle solo wherever you like, and I imagine Roulat's going to have a pretty good game with this pick at his side. Is this something that you imagine you can just let on through as the taunt does connect to Surgazek, makes out of there with no trouble, or are you of the mind that Athena's good enough to now where she needs to be permabanned, or are you looking at the comps first before you decide?
It's hard to say whether or not she's permaban worthy, but she certainly is incredibly strong. She's going to fit most drafts incredibly well, but generally solo and jungle skewing, there are already a lot of really good picks in both of those roles. I'm not sure she exactly outshines the best.
Oh, but this could be trouble for Toddy. He used beads, and they were not enough. First blood goes to the Clay Soldiers, and they're getting off to the good start they're going to need if they want to eventually get there to Sodos and start punishing him, and it is just a backbreaker. That beads were used in a futile effort as Listemics needs to be careful. Civi in this rage transformation is ready to get aggressive, sticking in close, but just not enough.
Man, the Clay Soldiers playing this early game aggressive strategy is exactly what you need to see, especially considering what Just F6 are running. Geb is a god that is going to give up pressure inside the long lane regardless of matchup, I don't care if you lock in 2 of the most passive gods in the enemy team, they're still going to be able to out-pressure Geb throughout the early, and then it creates the space for the rest of these boys to start to rotate over towards mid, and as you said, try and keep their eyes on the Zeus, make sure he isn't able to transition into mid-game too well.
Yeah, the thing about Toddy is my man does not have beads, so he is getting plucked every time that happens. And rooted, it's all happening. Unless Geb can get in there, Rotwin sure did on the tail end there with that shield, but the purple buff is being invaded. Rotwin here to try and defend, and defend he does. How does that happen? Spanify an agent that should have been free. Toddy wasn't even there.
Yeah, you know, roll out 50 damage, that's pretty good confirmation. Clay Soldiers can't kill Rotwin there, so they just have to out-confirm. Unfortunately, weren't quite able to do it this time.
Yeah, Toddy gets plucked in again. That's just going to keep on happening. Not going to be able to find the root follow-up, though. That would make that kill a lot more likely to happen. They end up connecting with the damage anyway, but he is back towards safety. So let's take a look at everyone else and what we're looking at. It's Bumba's dagger there for Rulad. I think that surprise is next to no one. He's going to be wanting Bumba's hammer eventually. Eye of the Jungle for Erlang. We see that on these more auto-attack focused junglers, so that makes a ton of sense. And then Tainted Steel and Reinforced Greaves. You know, this is an item that for some reason I'm taking a long time to let come into my builds, but that's not happening with these pros, man. They know the tankiness this item gives right away. It's such a game changer for them to pick up these boots, and we see it on supports and on these solo laners too. Yeah,
I really like the Reinforced Greaves start, especially considering how much focus we've seen from junglers this year and just heading over to the solo lane. I almost called it a 2-1-2 meta, as often we saw even Lasbra hanging out over in the solo lane in his set as well. So I think that's really where it's starting to come through. And the Tainted Steel, just that additional anti-heal as well, just to deal with what Lystemix is bringing on this Guan Yu. I think Sibi has itemized very well so far.
Yeah, it's making tons of sense what Sibi's elected to go for so far in this early game. I'm on board. They're going to need to make sure, though, if you're on the side of Just F6, I know they're trying to get their game plan off the ground of all of this setup with Geb and Juan, hoping to pay off with this Zeus. Oh, and they're all committing in solo. Defender of Olympus channeled, and the ultimate too much. Lystemix able to find a kill, and Sibi drops, and Roulat wants a bit more. Dash taunt onto Sergazek. They can't get much more in response. He does not have beads. If there were an all-in commit, maybe a chance for it to work, but I don't think there's any problem with taking your solo lane kill and just dipping out.
Yeah, Sibi is essentially not allowed to use Salmon Leap aggressively almost ever in this lane. If either Lystemix and Roulat have their ultimate, it's going to happen every single time. There's no way for Kakalan to escape that situation. He just has to play a little bit more defensively until he gets some more defense online inside of his build. Once he's a little bit tankier, maybe starts to rotate out a little bit, he won't have to worry about it nearly as much. But for right now, I don't want to see that Salmon Leap used almost ever unless it's into his own tower.
The Defender of Olympus will be there, man. That is the strength of Athena, her ability to change any fight into a 2v1. You are not getting any honor duels here, not when she is on the map. She will show up and turn the tide for them, though there is a little bit of that same pressure on Clay Soldiers, because Spanify can quickly show up into any fight as well, but maybe not as safely, right? Athena shows up and has Guardian stats and damn near mage damage. So that's the real problem, is Sergazek rotating over to right. Lystemix doesn't have the ult, but it has shown up. That really lowers the kill potential, and you see it there. But forcing that ultimate out, valuable in and of itself.
But it is a tough trade. He also splits the wave with Sibi, who is already behind. He trades out his blink as well. So Sergazek, who should be the pace setter for this team, might have to play a little bit more slowly. Going to be a lot harder for him to close gap on a Soto. So I like this from Just F6 moving into the jungle. They want him dead. Fortunately, though, he's taking a very defensive pathing.
Yeah, I wonder if he got the call. I mean, Ferriquick wasn't even in mid to give that information, but they knew someone was out there because he, as he said, took such a route, the kind of route you'd never take if your eventual goal was mid lane, you'd think, but he took the exact route needed to not get caught out by what was certainly going to be death for him in the jungle. So everything comes back to sort of this neutral state. It's 1-to-1 in the kills, but it's not been a particularly fast-paced game. I mean, one kill came purely off duo pressure, the other from the first, sort of pseudo gank of this game with Roulat ulting over to solo. This has been a relatively slow-paced game, and I think that might favor Just F6. You kind of want your Erlang Shen getting aggressive right away, I think. Now there's aggression in duo. Here's Roulat once again forcing the issue.
Luckily, he's able to get up in the air because Spanify that as he rejoins Zeus towards the center of the map and loses his life. You don't want to land into a lightning storm, bud.
That's what happened, it would seem, right? Out comes the Zeus damage, and it ends up being too much. Now Rulat with the dash, that nearly kills Farrakrick on its own. Forces out his beads as well, so Farrakrick becomes that much more vulnerable. Assume Agent looking for a pluck here, but it does not come through. But back to sort of this pacing here. Do Clay Soldiers have more pressure on them to be aggressive, or are they kind of okay with this relatively slow pace?
I would say the beneficiary of the pace would almost always be just F6, just because of that, again, the first top 3 picks that they got are so incredibly strong, and the weakness of Zeus is really kind of alleviated once he gets a couple items under his belt. It doesn't really matter if you're able to close gap onto him at the 30-minute mark. If he's just going to kill you when you get there, his damage output could be nearly second to none. But there is still potential from this Clay Soldiers draft in the late game if it does get to that point, an even state at the 25-minute mark. One pluck on a Zeus could just kill Zeus off the back of a crush or something along those lines. So it's going to be a very thin knife's edge that both teams are playing.
Yeah, I really am curious if we'll see something along a defensive itemization come from Sodos. I wonder if it might even just be mandatory. We'll see. Look at this aggression from Surgazek. He's moving into the enemy jungle, but Rulat is there. Dash in. Still no taunt. Surgazek drops a taunt of his own with the 9 turns blessing, and Rulat not liking his chances, but there is a Geb shield. Knock up not enough. An Agent should be able to guarantee Rulat can't survive with this lurking in the waters. That is the case.
Oh, no.
And Cataclysm from Watwin gets nothing as Agent gets the charge. Prey off in time. Bit of a spill there for Rulat in the jungle.
Yeah, weird engagement from Rulat as well. He doesn't have the damage just yet on this Athena to really take a 1v1 up against Erlang Shen, especially considering he's already got that stone-cutting sword online. That's just not a fight you're going to be able to win. He needs to have his teammates around him if he wants to go for those types of engagements. But I really like the discipline we saw from Clay Soldiers there. Agent says, all right, guys, let me pick up this kill. If you stick around, Serga, you'll probably die. I'm just going to get it myself and potentially escape. And even if I don't, trading support for jungle is almost always a good trade.
Yeah, it's great work, especially because I'd say that that's almost 100% to get that kill in that spot with lurking in the water. So, yeah, really well done by them. And they've kept this game quite even, and quite literally here. Only a couple of 100 gold separating these two teams. There are some experience gaps across the board, and that does seem to largely favor just F6, so they are behind in the jungle as well. So still very much any team's game here. As we got to the 10-minute mark, largely evenly. We'll check back in on some of these builds. You already highlighted a big stone-cutting sword there for Surgazek, which means he wins just about any sustained battle. And they're getting into the jungle again, looking to invade these back harpies. And just F6 are there. Clay Soldiers are now finally putting their foot on the gas just a little bit. This isn't anything crazy. Not like you're getting your red buff stolen on cooldown, but that's certainly still something.
It is nice to be able to strip away a little bit of that farm, but it's not really stopping the main target that Clay Soldiers really should be keeping their eye on. Sodos, 1-0-0 on Zeus, level 12 at 10 minutes. That's not the pace you want set on such an immobile god, on such a god that is easy to shut down throughout the early. This Zeus has essentially been allowed to free farm this entire game, and he's benefiting from it already. And maybe a half-level lead or a full-level lead over his opposition inside of Farrakrick. You need to get someone onto the Zeus. You have the tools for it. Have Civi rotate out, have Sarega shift his focus towards ganking Zeus himself. But either way, allowing him to free farm, that's not a great look.
Well, that is going to be a scary strategy for him, just kind of allowing him to eventually get to that point where Zeus is difficult to deal with. But Lastemics is committing, and Civi is going to be in some trouble because in comes Rulat as well, dropping down. But Surgazek finds the 9 turns blessing and is even re-engaging. They don't have the damage for any kind of kills, but it's a good thing he was there to help keep his solo laner alive. I mean, if we keep talking about maybe wanting to put some pressure on Sodos, but it's this solo lane pressure. It's all right side pressure for Clay Soldiers here in this early.
It has been. It was just so interesting again because you're really going to struggle killing a Guan Yu who's building Breastplate of Valor immediately into likely on Chile as well. Going to be very difficult for them to really deal damage to this guy in general. I think that it might be a little bit of a missed opportunity, but it could be due to the fact that Athena has that ability to rotate throughout the lanes. They don't want to fight near mid. If they do fight around solo, it will at least force the defender of Olympus, but it's an interesting style to be sure.
Bit of a back here from Civi. Lastemics not going to let him. That is just solo lane being solo lane on that side of the map. Surgazek showing some presence over on left, but there just isn't anyone over there for him to gank. There isn't even any camps for him to take at this point either. Might be worth one of these teams taking a look at this Greater Scorpion now, trying to set up somewhere on the map where they can kind of force the other team to step in. If you're Clay Soldiers, if you want to be the aggressors, might be a good chance to force some relics, but Rotwin's just getting aggressive. Surgazek's the target, and Sodos blows him up. Never want to turn golden in the air, though. Sodos a little late on the beads, but not going to be a problem. They already got rid of the jungler.
Yeah, maybe doesn't even need the beads there. It's just a little bit of a waste. Could have just walked on out of there clearly as he did this time around. Sodos has been able to do anything that he wants this game. I mean, 2 kills essentially given to him for free. The first one on Chernobog rotating in and immediately getting blown up, and the next one off Rotwin. Now another re-engage in mid as Agent is dropped low. No way they look for the dive here. Just F6. I have a pretty good opportunity to check the enemy jungle or maybe look towards that Greater Scorpion.
Yeah, I think this makes a ton of sense for just F6. They've kind of proven, I think, that if they get to start the fight on their terms, there's just not an answer to this Zeus right now. It's too much damage, especially if he's just willing to commit Lightning Storm, like even for one dude. I don't see what that one guy's answer is going to be on it if it's coming off the back of a Cataclysm and or Taunt. So let's see if they can kind of force some action over there on this Gold Fury side, as these picks have been strong, especially onto Surgazek, who up until now didn't have a ton of answers to that CC. You see the beads are on cooldown, was looking for a little bit of help. Just did not get him out of there once that Lightning Storm damage was present. But if you're Clay Soldiers, I think you got to try and capitalize on the fact that Sodos' beads are down on what you already talked about. Wasn't a particularly great usage of them anyway. See if they can get in there and try and punish him.
They have to, man. Have Surgazek blink in with a 9-turn blessing, or just do the Gold Fury, I suppose. Burning it quickly, and biggest confirmation on the map is going to be Crush. They take away that one absolutely for free. Time to disengage. Don't want to fight the Zeus now.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear right now. Bit of an over-exaggeration, but it's kept me up at night wondering when can you take the Greater Scorpion. And it seems like you got to make sure you're not just opening up the door for your enemies to come grab the Gold Fury, and that's exactly what they do. Sibby stealing some farm on the right side of the map. That's being pinged out. Just F6 no, but won't catch up to him in time. Got to make sure if you're bringing down the Greater Scorpion that you're at least somewhat present so that the other team can't just take it for free.
A little bit of egg on Just F6 face in that situation, but still not the biggest deal. I really do believe Just F6 should be able to outscale, especially considering it seems like Clay Soldiers have an actual aversion to hitting Sodos. He should be able to scale well into the late game, have him get there from even or even 2,000 or 3,000 gold behind. The engage factor that Just F6 should be able to bring with this composition could make up for that slight gold deficit. But for now, Clay Soldiers are going to have to play a lot more intelligently on the map, on the macro, if they want to find some fights in their favor. No more is there a POI to force an engagement.
Rotwin looking for Farraquick. The whole squad not there, though. They swapped targets over to Agent, and I like this. You want the support, right? As Agent is inside lurking in the waters, looking for Sodos, who is the target, forced to use Aegis, but does survive. Lightning Storm divides the fight. Doesn't get a whole lot in terms of damage because Painify comes into it for one tick as Rotwin now low and stuck on the wrong side of the battle. Uses the shield on himself, but Rotwin will fall because Painify's damage. Now Toddy looking for a chance for a little bit of damage on his own as Roulat forced to drop the beads at the back of this battle. A curious fight to say the least as Toddy hit by that ultimate coming out from Sibby, but there is no follow-up as Listemics wants this fight but cannot find Sibby.
A very split-up engagement. Fantastic use of the Crush from Farraquick to make sure Rotwin isn't able to rotate back into his team, but they take so much damage, Clay Soldiers that is, in exchange that they can't be defending this tier 2 on tower. They're just going to lose their lives. Agent falls easily.
And Sibby going to be right behind him. That stun was there, but the follow-up couldn't be there as easily. Yes, Listemics does get the kill, but Sodos was kind of left in the middle. Good job flanking there by Surgazek. And that's going to work 9 times out of 10 if Rotwin is not there. Who else can provide such a good backup for him? So they do a good job turning that one around. They do lose Sibby and Agent, but getting Sodos certainly adds in some value. But they lost their mid-tier 1 and 2 kills. So not going to say that Clay Soldiers won that one. The numbers would disagree as Listemics and Roulat want this kill. Surgazek's the target. They're bringing the Athena here to the fight, turning around from Surgazek. I like the idea. I'm not getting taunted. I'm going to die anyway, but I'm not getting hit by the taunt. No shot.
Yeah, no taunt, no dash. Maybe I steal the blue buff as well. That'd be a pretty hot play for the young man. Cataclysm committed there. Interesting. Guess Rotwin was a little bit sick of the chase by that point. Looked like Roulat didn't want to commit himself either, but that is a huge tool loss if a team fight does happen. Defender of Olympus and Cataclysm committed to a kill that I would say they'd already confirmed.
It's good work, though. He was able to come by and at least invade the buff on the back of what was a guaranteed death for Surgazek. We have seen that Just F6 are not shy at all to commit ultimates, commit cooldowns. They brought Roulat in right away when they saw that Surgazek was vulnerable. Then, as you already covered, Rotman was willing to drop the Cataclysm just to make sure they got the kill. Maybe trying to see if they could defend the blue buff and get the kill. But either way, they were not able to, and they will settle for that pick. So now we've made it close to the 20-minute mark. We're at 18, and this game's still very much close. About 1,400 gold or so, maybe a little more than that, favoring Clay Soldiers. A lot on the back of that Gold Fury they took uncontested earlier in the game. But aside from that, this has been a relatively close game. Both teams finding answers, picks on the supports, finally able to get a dive onto Sodos. This is a very much even game still.
It is, and now with about a minute left on this Gold Fury respawn, that should be the next POI on the map where both teams are forced to make a commitment. Sibby, forced to use his ultimate there. He doesn't want to get taunted back into the tower.
Yep.
Not the biggest deal. He could be able to just reset, regroup on the Gold Fury, and have that one available to him. Clay Soldiers are going to clear out that Greater Scorpion on the Fire Giant side. Now they're going to be 2 POIs on the map at the exact same time. Both teams get to make a decision. Whoever starts the Gold Fury, you could just have Pyromancer taken on the other side, or even potentially the Fire Giant if you're Clay Soldiers. They have that kind of burn potential, as well as the confirmation.
Yeah, I think adding that auto attack assassin's always going to do that for you in terms of that DPS. So Surgazek going to be helpful, and they've likely got some of the best confirm in terms of instant burst damage too. Or just Pyromancer, as you said. A lot of the times when it's not too late in the game, that's one of the bigger deals about Greater Scorpion. But now the Fury is the target, and we'll have both teams here for it this time, no sneaking. But Myth, a lot of the times at this point in the game, if the fight goes handily to one team, they'll just kind of bypass the Fury and go right over to Fire. The stakes might be higher than just this Primal, depending on how handily the fight goes for one team.
Yeah, keep your eyes on Sotos. If he's able to get a good lightning storm in this engagement, I mean, that should just about spell the end of it. So he's going to have to play very far back, make sure the Clay Soldiers aren't able to close gap onto him, potentially wait for Lot to start a fight, burn away some beads, and then Rotwin can blink forward with the Cataclysm. If you're a Clay Soldiers fan, you really want Surgazek getting a good 9 turns blessing to start off these fights, and then potentially burn some beads and have Agent engage for his team. But it seems like both squads a little bit hesitant to dance around the Gold Fury, instead kind of shifting back more so to a neutral state.
That's what it seems like. Ferrocrit going to take a reset here, and it looked like a big reset. I think that was Obshard, yeah, coming in for him, and that will significantly change this fight. My man Rotwin is tanky, but you suddenly look a lot less tanky once that percent pen is online for someone like Scylla, who already has a ton of pen innately in the kit, so pretty scary prospect for Just F6 in terms of trying to defend this, but the fight has fully shifted. Clay Soldiers are heavily present here in mid, as are Just F6. But now it looks like they are shifting a bit over towards the left. Agent lurking around. Caspanify already has it pulled. Just F6 can't once again have the rug pulled out from under them. They have a ward on it. They know Lestimix has made his way in, but the Crush was patient, and Just F6 get the Primal. But Caspanify pays for it with his life and his relics. No need to use them there. My man was dead to rights.
He was. Now Rotwin wants a little bit more, see if he can maybe chase out Ferrocrit. Sentinel already used, but it's not going to be enough. Huge damage from the Crush. Sotos dropped to about a 30%.
Yeah, but Just F6 are going to re-engage. Agent is removed, even with the knock-up there from Sibby. Just F6 are not done fighting now, but Sibby doing all he can to keep this fight in his hands, but it's just not going to work. Sibby ends up dropping a 3-for-0 plus Gold Fury plus tier 2 for Just F6. That's going to help get this game a bit closer. Well, they don't get the Fury. Clay Soldiers did manage to confirm it, but the fight goes in their way.
There's no way Surgazek's willing to go in here, right? Throws the pin over the wall, doesn't connect with anyone, instead disengages himself. Much better play here. I'm surprised Just F6 like to stick around for the tier 2 tower and then invade red buff. They've got so much time to work with. If anything, now, as much time has passed, go ahead, return to base as quickly as possible, then regroup around that Fire Giant. You still have 20 seconds left on Sibby. This is a huge opportunity.
A chance to grab the most important objective on the map, and that seems to be the idea, at least to come this direction. There is no Pyromancer over here, so this isn't about the smaller objective. This is getting control over this Fire Giant pit and daring Just F6 to move back in. A huge fight for Just F6 in that last fight, though. Clay Soldiers looking like they're having a hard time getting in and getting past all this damage that Just F6 have, but time's kind of ticking away. I don't know how big of an advantage they're truly going to have in terms of the numbers anymore. Relic's still down for Caspanify and Agent. They both dropped everything early on in that Gold Fury scrap. Bede's still not available for Ferricrick. So if I'm Clay Soldiers, I am a bit gun-shy when both of the carries for Just F6 do still have their beads.
Yeah, gonna have to play a lot more defensively here, but they still do benefit from a very slight gold lead, and Fire Giant not being started up by Just F6 means that Clay Soldiers have got the time to have all their teammates respawn, get the ultimates available, and start to reposition themselves on the map. Neither team even looking at the Fire Giant right now. Instead, again, return to neutral, see if maybe we can find someone straggling on either side, find a pick, and then move in towards the POI.
Yeah, I gotta think in this scenario, it might just be worth kind of vibing here for a little bit for both of these teams. That big advantage Just F6 seem to have for a moment. The power play's gone. And Toddy gonna dash right on in. Heading up into the air is Caspanify, caught out by Toddy, and even a little bit of backup from Roulat. So there's also some action in mid. Sodos has the damage, and Caspanify is low once he lands. That was not easy at all. So Toddy takes the tier 1 tower in left, and now it's a grouping from Just F6 in left. Surgazek forced to run, but Cataclysm there. So Surgazek drops the beads, makes it through. But Just F6 are now grouped up in left. Maybe they go tier 2, but instead it'll be a red buff invade. I like this, at least getting something away from Clay Soldiers.
Surprised Toddy elects to go for the purple buff instead of keeping up pressure on side of that tower. No one really there to defend except for Agent. Just F6 do have the numbers advantage on the left side of the map instead, though. Again, weren't quite able to pick up a kill, but were at least able to strip away some of those defensive relics. Heavenly and Shell used by Agent. Surgazek forced to use his beads as well. Look, now's a good time to move in towards the Fire Giant, or maybe potentially just wait for this Pyromancer to respawn, but Clay Soldiers have shown 3 times in a row now they're not quite ready for a team fight.
Take a look at some of this itemization, though. We were kind of correct about a Sundering Axe potentially coming in. His E-Staff as well there for Sodos. So he's trying to add a little bit of survivability. I mean, even the Soul Gem adding a little bit of health to this build. So he's not as easy to all-in as he once was. And that was sort of your fear here for Clay Soldiers, that if you give Sodos too much time, he's going to do this. He's going to make himself at least increase the time to kill for himself at least a little bit and still have the damage because the pen is still there in this build as well. It's Staff of Mirrodin and Stone of Fall there for Lot. They've got the itemization to start fighting right now with some of the key items they've just finished.
Yeah, Roulat's going to ult in onto Lastemics off a cavalry charge and then taunt you twice. That's pretty tough. He's going to burn your beads and then confirm another taunt off your burned beads. That is going to be a very difficult situation for Ferricrick to escape or even Caspanify, but Clay Soldiers, undeterred, pull the Fire Giant.
Well, they've got to try and respond to the fact that Toddy is not here, so I think they're trying to force the battle. Lastemics is plucked into the Fire Giant, but Clay Soldier's kind of losing the plot here a bit. Fire Giant DPS has stopped. They're all in on the fight, and in comes the ultimate from Roulat. Defender of Olympus is huge as Agent gets taunted back in, and Toddy is unyielding in left. Left side Phoenix done. They actually sent Ferricrick back, so it's a 4v4 here in the Fire Giant pit. Clay Soldiers, I think, outmaneuvered a bit as Sodos is low. He will eventually fall, but overall, Just F6 have a good start to this one.
Now Lastemics on his last breath, scratched that double kill for Sibi. Now Rotwin on the target. Agent could have the plot coming up pretty soon, but instead, shift your target. Toddy GR isolated because Vanify found him.
He ends up in a little bit of trouble. I'm surprised my man is still drawing breath. There's still some very low targets out there on the side of Clay Soldiers, but Just F6 cannot afford to pursue. So let's get a bit of a rundown here, Myth. It's the entire left side of the map taken by Toddy, and Clay Soldiers got 2 picks. They now have the numbers advantage, though. If they can get this Fire Giant, they can force it before Just F6 can regroup. They tip the scale back in their favor.
They do. Roulat hovering around trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. Saraga immediately peels off. He's the best DPS you have on the Fire Giant. They have the crush and the ultimate available, but he's just dying inside of it? What?
Just F6, get it! Ferricrick ends up falling. It's a complete fumble here from Clay Soldiers right at the 1-yard line. They do get Toddy on the back side of it, but everything else taken away from the Chaos side team. Just F6 have found a way to outmaneuver Clay Soldiers here in the late game. Myth, it's too many errors there from when they struggled with the late game decision making and how to respond to Just 6 here. I actually think things would have been okay if they at least got the fire, but they didn't.
Look, Rotwin's the only one with a Fire Giant buff around his waist, but we're going to take it back, Finch. We're going to go all the way back to the initial pull of the Fire Giant in that 5 versus 4 favoring Clay Soldiers while Toddy was split pushing. Eventually, they send back Ferricryk to defend the Phoenix that had already fallen. That's your confirmation for Fire Giant, by the way, and they reset it at 20%. Immediately lose the fight off the tail end of it, or win it rather, 2-0. Reset, go back to Fire Giant. Ferricryk goes into I'm a Monster. Tanks actually 16 auto attacks from Toddy GR, hoping that maybe Agent would be able to put the Fire Giant into execute range. It's just a tough situation, man. And now Just F6 are in a great position. They've been able to win team fights consistently without the Fire Giant buff. So just removing that POI from the map means that they can start looking at Phoenixes again, with Fire Miniways leaking down the left side as well. Clay Soldier's going to be spread thin.
Yeah, that Fire Giant play, I'm right there with you. That was pure defense from Just F6. I don't even know if they're all that bummed that no one has the buff on them. I mean, I'm sure they'd prefer it, but in that scenario, you're happy just to not let that end up landing on Clay Soldiers. That really skews the last 3 minutes of this game into their favor, and they are indeed getting aggressive. 5-man grouping here in right, pushing up. Fire Minions already in left, and the Phoenix exposed in mid. Just a question of can they get rid of this last tier 2 and open things up even a bit more. If you're Clay Soldiers, though, you've got to find a way to not let the fight get so out of your control. They so clearly need for Ferricryk to be following up off that setup. They can't allow the match to get any more complicated than that, I think.
Yeah, Ferricryk has been struggling to find the follow-up as well. Take a peek at the damage charts, Finch. My man's got 1,800 more than his support. 1,800 more than the lowest in the game as well. That is an incredibly tough situation considering how far below he is his opposition. That's about 4,000 separating them. Double the damage nearly. It's going to be a long time, I think, until Ferricryk's in a position where he can really start to make some plays around his ultimate. He needs Agent to be landing these plucks. He needs Beats to be down. And so far, he's been struggling to just survive the dive from Just F6.
It's tough for him, and Listimics has to come in, CC immune for a long duration on his ultimate. Lot gets to just drop in for free on the back of that with that Defender of Olympus. It's difficult for him to make it through, but those are the tools they gave up earlier in picks and bans. Just F6 don't have these by some divine act or weird coincidence, right? It was that's how it was earlier. They came into this with the tools they thought that they could respond with. So let's see how they do it on this important Phoenix defense. This left side Phoenix already easier to take down, weakened earlier by the great work from Toddy splitting up the map, and the mid and right Phoenixes are open, and the right is relatively pushed up, and Roulat's pushing up here in mid. This is great work by Just F6 to prepare for this siege.
Yeah, I really like the split push as well. Because of the Scylla on the enemy side, it's going to be hard to work their way in, but instead, it's a true engage.
They move in. Sibi responds to it by sitting on the backline. Toddy and Soto's dealing with him on their own. So the entirety of Just F6 returns. Cataclysm hits 2, but the follow-up not in position to output the damage. But if you're on Just F6, you can re-engage here. Relic still available for almost everyone on Clay Soldiers. Sibi has his down. Beads down for Toddy. Blink down for Listimics. So both teams can legitimately afford to fight again.
But Lightning Storm still available, might be the most important cooldown on the map. Could immediately split them up. Missed pluck, Agent, rest in peace.
Yeah, that might be enough, but
Or
somehow
not.
Just F6 are the members that end up low on the back. Lightning Storm hits next to no one, and Just F6 reconsidering the fight, but there's a taunt from Roulat. The autos from Toddy cannot quite connect, so members on both sides low, but somehow all 10 lives still here. But there's the damage coming in from Sotos. Even finds the detonate, but that's still not enough for kills. How are all 10 members still standing?
Seems we've whiffed a little bit of a Lightning Storm there. Was only able to separate the fight for a split moment. Doesn't even separate the lane. Instead, Clay Soldiers were able to walk all the way around. We saw Agent missed pluck and then walk back to his Phoenix absolutely for free. And that Phoenix had time to heal up throughout all of those skirmishes. Was it about maybe 1/4 HP all the way back up to half? Just F6 were not able to work their way forward. Fantastic defense from the Chaos side team. With Fire Giant spawning, Phoenix respawned as well. I think Clay Soldiers can put up a defense here.
See what they do. They already have Agent in position. Not too far is Kaspena, Phi, and Surgazek. So they'll certainly be here in order to respond. And they've got plenty of key items to make this fight a little bit easier for them as well. 3 sentries, 3 regular wards. That gives them the advantage over just F6, who just placed 1 in their sentries, only have 1 left, and 1 traditional ward. It looks like Agent took a bit of a reset. He's ready to come back in, reloaded up on wards. So just F6 might need a bit of a reset on their own, but can they even afford to? Rotwin went back. Maybe they have to do this and a piece or 2 back at once, but they are giving up too much of this position to Clay Soldiers, who start up the Pyro.
It seems like Just F6 are just calling Clay Soldiers bluff. All right, you guys started
Right.
Fire Giant last time. Weren't quite able to do it. No way you start it while we're all alive again. We're just going to walk in, and they've been right so far. Clay Soldiers have had infinite time and no opposition.
But Rotwin gets grabbed, does drop the Cataclysm. That allows him to get out, but that is a huge ultimate now on cooldown for Just F6. And Lystimix gets his ult forced out too, and now Roulette is in alone.
What?
Suddenly, Just F6 are the team that's disjointed. A complete reversal from how the last 33 minutes have unfolded.
Yeah, surely one of us can win this 1 versus 5 on the Fire Giant. Unfortunately, that's not how it works out. Lystimix forced to use his ultimate on the retreat. Yeah, Fire Giant picked up. That's an enhanced one, by the way, as well. 3 Tier 2 towers standing between the Clay Soldiers and the base of Just F6. I don't think Just F6 really are going to put up a defense on any of these Tier 2s, stripping away that backdoor protection, because Manify should be able to strip them away that quickly. Yeah, the Tier 2's already dead.
Yeah, and there's no way Toddy can push up there and left and try and force some kind of base race. They're going to have to contest on this right side Phoenix quickly, and they're not in position just yet. Rotwin zoned out. Lystimix as well. This right side Phoenix is done for. A great reversal from Clay Soldiers. The Fire Giant enhanced on all 5 members. The solo side of the map completely exposed now for Just F6 as well. And it's off the back of the first really mind-boggling engage from Just F6.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and revoke Saragazek's jungler card. Man's just walked past a speed buff and didn't take it. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before, Finch, but you're absolutely right. Clay Soldiers now in a position to be primed for the win. Just strip away a couple more Tier 2 towers, haven't already taken down a Phoenix before backing after that team fight, means that they've created space and pressure on the map that is just going to be passively generated for the next 5 or so minutes until that Phoenix respawns. Just F6 now have to utilize their defensive composition in an actual defensive positioning. They've got very good tools. Lightning Storm is a no-play zone set up easily with a taunt or a cavalry charge, and the game simplifies on defense. But instead, Just F6 are grouped up as 5 on the right-hand side. Interesting.
I wonder if this is a race or
Base
we'll
race?
see those backs showing up here soon. It looks like it is indeed gonna be them backing. Just F6 cannot afford to bluff this one. They return. Sibby, though, still backing. No, he's got the information now. They're not there, so he sticks it out. Did not have the teleport to come back in anyway, so it's good that was canceled. And now we have a left side fight, but in goes the engage from Clay Soldiers. They're looking for Toddy in the backside of this fight. Does a good job with the Mez, but no one's helping him. Sibby is just wailing on him in the back, finally gets a shield. Meanwhile, Ferrocrick drops the Anna Monster, sets up for Caspanify to put Roulette in a coffin, send him back to base the hard way, and in comes Agent, pluck off the mark, but no sweat. His team a little too comfortable right now to stress about missing one of those. Left side Phoenix taken away, and Toddy brought back into the Wolves. He's done for.
Just F6 limping back into their fountain. 5 versus 3 on the base defense. Can they do it? It's going to be tough.
Well, not with Sotos being plucked back in. He has the Aegis and the Bead, so that buys him some time, especially with the Geb shield there. But how much time is the question?
Okay.
He gets rid of Caspanify, makes it even back to the fountain. Huge that he lives through, but the Titan is low. The Titan falling, and no one stopping Sergazek from chewing it up. Clay Soldiers take that game number 1.
Just F6, man, they've got to be kicking themselves off of that, controlling the entire actual match for 32 human minutes, and then at the 33-minute mark, fumbling it around the Fire Giant. Such a tough loss in that one. But, look, it's not like they had the most insane composition ever, so at least in Game 2, they could try and swift it up in P's and B's.
Right. Next time come back in with something a little bit better, you know, in terms of a draft composition. Obviously, we're joking on this one. Tough for Just F6 now. They're going to find a way to bounce back on 2 levels, I think, in that game number 2. Quick break, and we'll be right back.
We're going to maybe start sounding like a bit of a broken record with this Just F6 team here, Goremizer, because Just F6, they look good. They come out of the gates hot. They're winning the game. And then they fumble it around the FG a little bit later on into the game. Clay Soldiers are able to win, and I can't believe it. Look, Just F6 had a pretty nutty top 3. I mean, an Athena Guan Yu start, even if you just consider the top 2, you're thinking there's no chance this front line loses, and unfortunately they did.
Look, man, we live near Atlanta. Like, if you're a Falcons fan, like, you're used to seeing some throws, right? But this was, again, like, they're controlling it. You roll back, what, 5-6 minutes from the end of the game, and they're pushed up against the left Phoenix. It almost seems like things should go their way, and it just crumples underneath them. Unfortunate for them. And I swear, Dave, most of the highlights I feel like we saw at the beginning of this game and what I saw towards the end of this were very similar in the sense that they look really good while their Titan dies, right? Like, their ability to fight in the base is really awesome for Just F6, but man, is that such a bad thing to be good at, right? Like, cool, right. You're really good at losing the game, but still winning that fight right there at the very end. Although I don't know that you can call it winning. I mean, you have to look at this. Like, I even was saying, like, normally we can compile some sort of replays and like a story to tell. There wasn't a lot for Clay Soldiers. They didn't do much for a lot of this game. It was Just F6 really piloting it. This fight. Over on the left-hand Phoenix, while the aggression was going on the side of Just F6, was one that was just cool to me. I don't even think there was, like, nobody dies here. There's not any, like, game-changing play, except that Just F6 don't get that Phoenix. The fact that they have to fall back there is probably where all of their momentum stopped, although it was a Fire Giant pretty much right afterward. This is where Clay Soldiers were able to regroup. They recognized that they could do it, win the fight, win the game off of that, and, of course, Scylla looking as good as that is going to be able to do well, but I mean, for 30 minutes, it was kind of the Just F6 show. I was very surprised to see Soda's like doing well on this Zeus. Me and you talked about that Sundering axe picked up just after the E-Staff, and I kind of like it. Like, Zeus's biggest issue is survivability, and getting 2 items that give you a lot of health means you should survive a little bit easier, right? With Geb shields behind you, I think the plan was there. Unfortunately, the execution just fell through for him right at the end.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's one of those games where the stats don't necessarily tell all the story. The one and only kill that Scylla got all game was the individual pick right by the Fire Giant, but that was the maybe most important pick of the game, and that allowed Clay Soldiers to push on through, work in towards those Phoenixes, work in towards the Titan, and end up getting the win. Look, I always admire creativity, so I'll never fault Just F6 for trying some new stuff, going with the Zeus out of the draft. Look, it did, I think, top damage in the game by the end of it. If not, it was damn near close. So there's obviously some merit maybe to a pick like that. I don't think this one falls on the shoulders of the Zeus, but maybe something a little more consistent gets you over the finish line next time. TBD. We'll see if picks and bans for game number 2 tell us a slightly different story. Just F6 in that first pick slot this time. And Gore, in all honesty, if Just F6 run the same draft back, I don't know if they're hating getting an Athena and a Guan Yu and a Geb to start things off.
Yeah, I think, again, this is one that if you but I think the Zeus, if you're going to lock him in, like, that's the hardest thing is drafting someone that is so immobile. Opwash tends to suffer from this as well, where it's just, they're going to do a lot of damage. They might get a lot done in the middle of a team fight, but man, God help you if they get picked off at any point in this game, because it will be easy to pick them off at any point in this game. And so I think for Just F6, like, draft around that. Make your bans around that. Plan for protection for your team. And there's too many gods in the game to try and ban everything that's going to make them feel under, well, I'll say it, under duress for the duration of the game.
There we go. We got one today.
It is going to be something. Yeah, maybe, first one of the year, maybe? 2021? We'll have to figure that one out.
Well,
but I think there's also, like, an interesting dynamic where you're picking things like Zeus, but you're banning Tiamat when your first pick. Like, maybe go ahead and practice that one and see what you can do and, you know, see what it can bring.
That's right. Polini's interested in the prioritization. Ramsey's somewhere around here. I don't know. She's laying on the nice, cool tile in the back. It's pouring rain here in Atlanta, Georgia, so all the dogs are going to be inside and running around, I imagine, as the day goes on, as they're not able to get out and get their usual exercise. Interesting, though, Gore. I mean, Tiamat notwithstanding, which is pretty intriguing that Just F6 don't leave that open for themselves here. So we see a Nem first pick overall, again with the likes of Guan Yu still available. Guan Yu's completely looked over in the first 3 here. Plenty of those solo lane warriors that are so highly prioritized have just been looked over. And it's for a Nem, Chernobog, and Giannis. Admittedly, Chernobog not all that surprising. We've seen where he's been placed in a lot of the pick ban here. But the Nem first overall, admittedly, Gore is pretty surprising.
Yeah, especially with, I mean, like you said, like frontline are deadly and they're scary, but I don't know that they are going to lock anything in immediately that I'm worried about for the Nemesis. Like, it's just one of those things that catches me a little off guard. Maybe they didn't expect the Athena ban, so they were scrambling to figure out where to go next. Maybe it comes down to it. I mean, what was it? Mifflin revoked Roulat's jungler card there for walking past the speed buff at one point.
Right.
Maybe it's to try and bring some of that back to make sure that, you know what? I can work well with Nemesis. If Roulat is good with Nemesis, then absolutely pick it up. Syl and Apollo's a good pair for that, so it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It is just, like you said, a little weird.
Well, it's maybe one of those picks where this Just F6 team doesn't want to show too much too early on in the draft. I mean, Nem's just an assassin. She'll drop the ult on you, and then she'll run you down after that. So it's not like you're revealing all that much about your draft while leaving yourself open to some flexibility later on. We'll see if Guan Yu makes it through yet another round of bans here. Cerberus has continued to be a pretty popular high-priority ban. Obviously, anti-heal or stealing some of that healing feels pretty good. The ultimate, the ability to lock down targets and do decent damage, even if you only build just a little bit of damage on the backside of your build, certainly feels great. Khepri and Geb banned out here, Gourdmiser, by the Clay Soldiers. And the tier is going to round out the final ban here in game number 2. What do we think? Geb ban worthwhile?
Honestly, I like Geb to be taken away from this team if they're going to go for something similar. Like, it's one of the things that, again, first pick a couple of times doesn't make too much sense, but it's happened a few times, you know, throughout the league over here. As Bellini's taking down a duck in the background over there.
Is that a duck?
So,
I was going to ask.
Yeah, they love their plushy ducks, Dave, more than anything in the world. The squeaky ducks are their best friends, and now they're going to be right over here playing with each other. Anyway, you know what? I can sit just like this, perfectly angled, while I talk about this with Fafnir, Hercules. I don't know, like Just F6, maybe it's just their wheelhouse. Maybe it's their god pool. That might be the thing that's really getting to me is just, you know, this Gab ban is not necessarily something I would put at the top, especially compared to other Guardians, but I also forget about, you know, Fafnir, your Xingqians even. Like Ymir,
right.
It's someone that is absolutely worth banning. I think Khepri belongs up there, but I think that Just F6 have a specific god pool where things like this Ratatoskr and this Geb belong to be banned against them because it hurts them so much.
And they got great. Clay Soldiers got some pretty good engage on the back end of their draft here between the Xingqian and the Hunbat. So whether it's that whirlwind of Rage and Steel pulling targets back in, or the Fear No Evil, I suppose, spreading targets back out, whichever way you want to look at that, the Clay Soldier score, I think, have a pretty decent team fight to look forward to if you're a fan of theirs.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Clay Soldiers are going to be able to do because this is just such good team fight late game potential. And honestly, with Chernobog and Giannis, like you have the capabilities to traverse the map in a way that Just F6 Apollo's going to be able to keep up, but the rest of them might not. You strip away the Scylla from last game. Well, strip away. They picked Giannis first, but you kind of control that mid lane maybe a little bit better than what Zeus was able to do. But I think the burst is still technically going to exist there for Clay Soldiers. If Just F6 with this draft can get the same lead they had last game, they should be able to win. But the problem is that can you get it and maintain it against a draft like what Clay Soldiers have? That's where they're losing me. I think Clay Soldiers, from a very early on, especially with the Hunbats and the Kamazats, are going to be able to dictate a lot more of the pace of this game.
And it's another data point for us for what I'm assuming is Hercules out of the solo lane. We saw that.
Yeah.
I believe it was, once yesterday, and looked all right in the game we saw it. Unfortunately, a loss in the one game that we saw Hercules solo, but interesting there, to be sure, nonetheless. Fafnir's not a pick core that we've seen all that often out of the support role, but getting that boost, getting that stim on this Apollo is going to certainly assist in getting some of that damage off in the late game.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they work together all around. Like, I think, again, a lot of the parts that we had and a lot of I guess, combination that they had on the side of Just F6 worked out really well for them in most of the team fights. Like, the most place they were lacking damage wasn't even a place where they were lacking damage. It was just Zeus not quite being able to get the full kills they wanted to as time transitioned into the late game. Scylla's going to be able to clean those up. Apollo, if he can get a little closer, is going to be pretty happy, I think. So with Scylla and him, with especially a Hercules Fafnir leading the way, I anticipate specifically that fight at that Phoenix that we could maybe call the pivotal moment of game number 1 where they really lost their grip. I don't think that happens the same way. I don't think you walk away with all 10 players alive. Somebody gets killed, and for Just F6, ideally that means Apollo, Scylla are picking things up. Nemesis, Fafnir, Hercules just feel like such an easy setup for the rest of them that I think for Just F6, as long as they can play the same game, well, then we'll be going to 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, with the Scylla pick, it so often comes down to that hard CC, that hard setup that just makes it easier for the I'm a Monster and the Crushes, that full volley of offensive burst to connect. A lot of it's on Fafnir and Hercules, right, to set up for the Scylla to get that damage off. Game number 2, Just F6, Clay Soldiers on the verge of winning. Let's jump in.
Thanks once again on the desk there, Gordon Dave. Still finching him if here as they move into this critical game number 2. And the power levels of these teams have been brought down a bit, but only a bit, as these are still some strong drafts here, Myth. And we're seeing Circuzek here, the Unbots. I feel like we don't get to see him all that often. Shing Chen, Fafnir as well. These are some interesting ones here, but certainly ones that I think have a chance to be impactful. Where are you drawn to here, Myth, in what you're seeing?
Immediately, my eyes, as always, go into the junglers, Finch. You know I've got that slight bias there, but Roulat picks up the Mannequin Scepter on Nemesis, a god who scales incredibly well into the late game, now making up for some of that early at the expense of his ability to farm the jungle efficiently. He's going to be getting a little bit less regen throughout. You're going to have to keep your eyes on this Nem. If he doesn't get a kill in the first 6 or so minutes, that's like 650 wasted gold right there.
Yeah, and I got to imagine whatever else he's doing with his itemization to make up for the lack of sustain is going to be a bit lost there as well. So certainly worth keeping an eye on how he manages to navigate the jungle. Circuzek rocking the bots. Certainly a pick that we all love to see. Fear Evils can be such game-changing abilities in team fights, can often dictate how team fights go. That's how strong that type of an ability is. And I think Circuzek, who had a great game last game, is exactly the man that you want to put that much control to, that you can count on to follow through on in these team fights. He was getting back there, and even when Sodos was putting off damage, sticking to him, he's the only one that stuck to the Titan. On their base defense, as the portal catches out Roulat, but no hard engage here. Minions hurt early on. So good work paying the respects there, Clay Soldiers, and kind of staying back.
Every bit of damage Roulat takes in the early is even more impactful than it would have been otherwise. That's why we're starting to see Just F6 make this rotation over to alleviate some of that pressure. If Roulat drops down to 50% HP again, man's out of potions, he doesn't have any sustain from his build, he's got to play very safe, as well as the fact that instead of going for the Bumba's Dagger double boots, he's slowing down his movement speed a lot as well with his Katana start.
This is going to be an interesting early here for Vlad. Who is he going to be aggressive on? Who's the target out there that made the mannequins all in on this early seem like the route to go? Ferrocrick, I got to think, is nigh impossible to realistically stick to for him. Any portal, maybe even a threshold, should in most cases get him out of danger. But we'll see if he can lock him down, find a way to cause some problems for young Ferrocrick or whomever out of the jungle as Toddy narrowly avoids getting caught out there by the Chernobog. Root combination stays safe. Toddy did some work for them in game 1. He was central to that split push for them that got that early left side Phoenix and put pressure onto Clay Soldiers. They're going to need to have a similar performance here in game number 2 if they want to extend this set out and make it to game 3.
And Toddy should have an easier time performing in lane, not having to deal with a Sobek or something along those lines. Instead, Fafnir is going to be a relatively passive pick. Chernobog's still going to be able to match that global presence, but not quite able to do it all on his own. Rotwin trying to reprise his performance from game 1, seeing if he can maybe confirm yet another purple buff. Pretty easy to stop it from happening, just got to block a hammer.
Didn't happen here this time, but Sodos has rotated in, and they've got themselves a target. They want to lock down Caspanify, but he's made his way out. They'll settle for Agent. who avoids the root, hit by the crush, but it's still not enough, so Sodos dashes in aggressively, misses the Sikkim, but autos should be all that are needed. Does not happen this time. Agent manages to wiggle him out of a tough situation there.
Yeah, Agent essentially body blocks for 5-6 seconds, just making sure that Kaspanify is able to make it out of there, and unfortunately Sodos whiffs 3 Sikkums in that fight, the initial once he gets there, and then 2 more throughout the fight. A little bit of a tough situation that results in a net game positive for the Chaos team. Clay Soldiers strip away the purple buff absolutely for free.
Yeah, and Sodos still not level 5. That sojourn into the left lane meant that there was some time missing out on farm here in mid. That Ferricrik, who's going to be on essentially a hyper farmer here in Giannis. He gets around the map so well. You never want to start off behind to someone who's likely going to end up just getting ahead of you because they get to stuff faster anyway. So not a great prospect there for Sodos, who wasn't able to find first blood. Might have been worth it if he were, but just did not quite pan out for them that time. But for what it's worth, Clay Soldiers were not dominant in the early game in Game 1, were they? They kind of struggled and found their opening deep into the late game, 33 minutes in. If you're just F6, you really know that these games are not dictated all the time by how the early game goes, and they can find a window later on.
Yeah, at any moment you could have a slight fumble around a Gold Fury or a Fire Giant that immediately changes the entire face of the match. You know, Finch, I really am enjoying Season 8's ability to allow the duo lane to play nearly as aggressively as they want. Gone are the days of the 2-minute or the 40-second cringe gank to jungle, because junglers have to make such a large commitment to rotate over to duo with how large the map is in Season 8. Before, it was about 16 seconds to walk from one end of the map fully to the other end. Now it's a much longer trek, and that's why we're starting to see junglers put so little emphasis on the long lane.
That's all right. We've seen them kind of go to solo more often, where they're kind of near their farm anyways. Agent back and right in front of Rotwin certainly recognizes how low he is. That is to establish dominance and maybe even debate them in if they're able to get a little bit of backup on this side of the map. Rotwin continues to be aggressive. They've got Roulat nearby to deal with Surgazek, where he to show up, and Agent makes it out of there in the end just okay, as Unstable Vortex does half of Sodos' health at this point in the game. I'm sure that he loves that that's the objective truth of the world he occupies. There's nothing he can do to change it.
Yeah, imagine if that's Conduit Gem as well. Could have been 60-70% even, but luckily Sands of Time picked up for Ferricrik, so he's just going to be able to do that more often. Sure, Sodos absolutely ecstatic to be able to deal with that for the rest of the match. And just checking back in with Just F6 jungler Roulat, that Mannequin Scepter has not really been used just yet. Level 6 is the Nemesis, and that item really does start to fall off towards the mid-game, getting you very little value until you're able to upgrade it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say the Roulat's tried and failed yet. I haven't seen a ton of attempts yet out of this early game Mannequin Scepter starter item pickup. But maybe this is something that will a lot of good starter items if you're just going to stay in the jungle. Don't know that Mannequins is one of them, but this could be a critical fight for him. Beads used in exchange for the Fear No Evil, but in comes Sibby on the Camazotz, and it's such a critical first blood for Roulat, but can't find it. The boulder gets the perfect bounce to bury Surgazek 1-for-1, but first blood goes to Clay Soldiers.
I gotta imagine Roulat doesn't even attempt that play unless he has Mannequin Scepter. He's gotta think to himself, alright, I have to do something here. But even in that, we saw, what, 4 or 5 auto attacks land, and it's only ticking away for about 20, 30 HP per tick. That passive, so much more potent 5 minutes ago. It's one of the fastest items to fall off in Smite. Roulat certainly not happy with how that one goes, especially considering he trades out his beads.
That's right. He went for beads as opposed to an aggressive blink at the start of this game. We saw the reason. You kind of have to against Fear No Evil, or he just gets to solo you all early game. But it just didn't quite pan out for him. Now he's behind to Surgazek. Sodos is behind to Ferricrik. They do have a bit of a lead for Listimics. I think that kill with the boulder helped as Agent caught out by Rotwin, but has the jump. Makes it back towards safety without much trouble. But this early game so far is favoring Clay Soldiers. They're a little under 1,000 ahead. That's nothing crazy, but they do seem to have some leads in a couple of spots, especially mid-jungle.
And I think once this does turn to a true 5-on-5 engagement, the CC ability that Clay Soldiers bring, as well as their dive potential, should give them a slight edge. Farrakrick on the Cianis is going to act as a solo agent diver, just kind of hovering around the backline of Just F6, whereas Sibi is going to fully dedicate his time to making sure Sotos isn't allowed to have a good time on this Scylla. Kamazot's very good at chasing down the enemy mage, and with both of those two acting as solo agents, that means that Sergazek and Agent are both going to be having to be the root core of all the CC for their team. And the Washing Machine Ultimate from Jing Shen, as well as Fear No Evil, I think you can't really ask for much better CC.
Might be looking for Sibi. Can't find anything there, but yeah. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, an excellent setup tool at Agent's disposal. So we were wondering what Roulatte's kind of first attempt was going to be at getting some value out of this Mannequin's pickup, and it was coming to Sergazek in his own jungle and kind of hard committing, using the beads to push through Fear No Evil and trying to see if he can win that fight. I think he had a good shot to win it. Once Fear No Evil's down, Unbot's not a great 1v1 kind of god, but Sibi rotated over. It wasn't a true 1v1, and that's how those scales ended up tipping. So the next time Roulette looks for something, gotta make sure he's considering what his TTK is. Does he really have a chance to burn, or is he gonna have to calculate instead for a bigger skirmish maybe than what he initially chose? But still kind of keeping his head down, just farming it up. A bit surprised, I'd say, by this approach.
Yeah, the Mannequin Scepter, in my eyes, we've already missed our opportunity. That item is, I'm not even worth thinking. I'm not gonna think about it again, Finch, because that's how little value it's gonna be able to bring at this point in the game. As Farrakrick narrowly escapes his death there. Soto's going for the hero play, not quite able to finish off that Yanis, and doesn't even get the beads. Those were already burned. Does, however, strip away Yanis' ultimate, getting rid of some of that mobility factor for his team. I really do like that aggressive style from Sotos, who realizes he should have the advantage in the 1v1.
And he's right? I mean, he just does so much more damage, so much faster. The burst not comparable between him and the Giannis. Maybe Roulette has an opportunity to gank him now with that ultimate down. Beads coming back up, though, for him at the moment. Agent found Sotos in the jungle, gets a good sit-up, retreats, but in comes Sergazek. Good initial damage, baits out the dash, and Fear No Evil perfectly played. That's how you take a fight as Unbots, and Sergazek might even be able to escape. Though Toddy is up in the air, he dunks down to help his friends, but Farrakrick already has a double and is attempting to flee for his life. Toddy cannot catch up, and what an exchange. Please don't die to these minions. That's easy enough for Farrakrick. He makes it back.
Man, I really like the play we saw exemplified by Sergazek there. He holds onto his teleport off the Sacred Monkey Toss, waiting for Sotos to teleport himself. Sotos waits out the entirety of the Sacred Monkey, uses his own Sentinel, and by that time, Zek had already closed gap to set up his own jump to chase that one out. That is a small little microcosm of mechanical prowess that we got to see, and in just that moment, we see that all these guys are all competitors in this match. Unfortunately, though, Clay Soldiers, if you are a Just F6 fan, that is, pulls out ahead pretty handily, 2-0.
Yeah, a good fight for them, and now the mid-jungle gap is becoming a real issue. About a level and a half in favor of Farrakrick, the same for Sergazek in that jungle, and I think that's just not a big surprise with the way this early game has gone so far. Sergazek 0-1-3, hasn't completed any of the kills himself. I think happily giving those over to the young man Farrakrick, I think who will do well with those throughout this game. His damage is already pretty nuts. We've seen what he can do to Sotos. Even Rotwin didn't love what he got when Farrakrick came up for the Unstable Vortex. So it's a good spot to be in the middle of the map if you're a Clay Soldiers fan. But if you're just F6, these side lanes are not going poorly for you at all. Toddy was able to get involved. He dunked down in the middle of 3 and walked out. That's pretty impressive. Lastemix was able to find that boulder shot earlier to clean up Sergazek, so he's been doing great over in solo. It's just the middle of the map you're a bit worried about right now if you're a just F6 fan.
Take a peek at the builds on the sides of Clay Soldiers. Sibi and Sergazek electing to get the Transcendence as Agent moves forward with the ultimate, only pulls in Rotwin. That's not a good enough target for the Hun bots. Just going to go ahead and clear the wave here. As on the other side, should have built some defense, bud. Sibi falls easily.
What happened over there? Lastemix with an easy tower dive, and Sibi not giving his due respect. Meanwhile, in mid, I like where Agent's head is at. He knows that Roulette and Sotos, neither one of them have beads. So it's an easy pull, as Farrakrick could have bit off more than he can chew. No, he's honest. He can walk through walls. He's leaving. I don't know why I got excited there.
Well, maybe you were thinking a cripple comes through, maybe the crush lands, deals some damage, but unfortunately Sotos with every single bit of it. Agent, though, not as nearly as mobile, forced into his own tower. Ultimate off the mark. Roulat, however, able to pick it up with a couple auto attacks.
Yeah, Agent goes down. Turns out ult not needed from Sotos there in the end. Sorry, man, I'm still stuck back on that Ferrocrick escape. I just can't believe I thought my man was in trouble. Roulat looking to invade once more, but not going to happen. Not at half HP with Surgazek present for it. So that's some much-needed work there done by Just F6. That solo kill from Lastemics onto Sibby, and finding that kill in mid onto Agent, who cannot walk through walls. I talked about how those side lanes are going to be critical, and Lastemics proving it with some good work done up against Sibby.
Yeah, Sibby slowing down his build a little bit. Looks like it's going to be a shifter shield in the third slot for the Camazods. Already 2 levels down, just now starting to look towards defense. Probably not going to be too easy for him to find his footing here. It's going to come down to rotations out of that lane if you want to talk about solo laners in the future. I don't think Camazods ever steps up to Lastemics again.
No shot. No need. No shot. My man's looking to farm up enough to where Sotos can't play the game. Where Sotos doesn't get to have any fun, and instead just has to listen to his team have fun instead. So that's going to be his plan. We'll see if he can have that one pan out for him. But looking like it's going to be difficult for him. I mean, Lastemics did a great job in this early game, kind of boxing him in. As Sotos blinks in, Ferrocrick, though, simply just does not get hit. The Sycam's... You're right, that's right. He can just leave. Didn't matter, though. He didn't get hit by the Sycam in the first place. He could have left the normal way, I think. But walking through wall still pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if Sycam lands there, maybe he uses Aegis to avoid the crush. Maybe he uses beads to avoid the root instead, though. Walks through a wall. Now Rotwin in a little bit of trouble. Forced to transform into the dragon, surrounded by three. Not the best look. Rest in peace.
Yeah, they knew exactly where it was. We're ready for him. And meanwhile, Sotos in the ultimate. I don't even think he got to connect. Deleted by Ferrocrick. The next target will be poor Toddy, who just came to help his friends, but instead will be sent to the Shadow Realm. It's a double for Surgazek, as Clay Soldiers find a 3-for-0 across the map. And listen, I think the game plan's got to be to not fight where Lastemics is, and it's working.
Yeah, when your soul laner is that far ahead, it doesn't really matter if he's not there for the engagement, huh? Sibby getting a lot more value off that rotation because he was there for the fight. Lastemics gets to nurse his 2-level lead and doesn't really do much with it. Now, Greater Scorpion getting looked at by Caspanify should create the first POI on the map. 15 minutes in, Gold Fury going to be spawning very soon. And considering how Clay Soldiers just actually W-keyed into a tier 2 tower, I think they're going to be feeling pretty confident going towards the gold.
Yeah, that was a pretty dominant fight there in mid, wasn't it? And I wonder if Clay Soldiers are going to set up the Gold Fury for Clay Soldiers, because last time, Just F6 set up the Gold Fury for Clay Soldiers. Interested to see how that will work, and if Clay Soldiers will be able to come right back over and grab that Fury in time, or if Just F6 will show up and play some kind of defense. They're down about 2,000 gold right now, and even more in experience. The gold not nearly as big a factor as, yeah, that 5,000 gold deficit 15 minutes into the game. Is that too much, Myth? Can you come in and try and defend this Gold Fury from that point? I mean, if you give it up, it only gets worse.
Well, here's the thing, Finch. Best confirmation on the map when Scylla exists is almost always going to be Scylla. Crush hitting harder than Unstable Vortex is going to be the hardest hitting ability for the Clay Soldiers, so they at least, Just F6 that is, have steal potential. Whether or not they're able to win the team fight, I think it's going to come down to one man on the side of Just F6. Keep your eyes on Lastemics. If he's able to blink in, find a multi-man punch, disjoint the engage from Clay Soldiers, that's where Just F6 can really find their footing. But so far, we haven't seen Lastemics in a true 5-on-5 engagement. Seems like he knows Gold Fury is going to be where the fight is, and he's already hovering the left side.
Yeah, it's kind of an undue burden placed on him, isn't it? He now is forced to come over and get involved. It's Just F6 start up the Fury. They say it is for them, and Clay Soldiers set them up. And they're right. Clay Soldiers are on the way, though, to contest. And already low is Ferrocrick, forced to use his ultimate just to disengage. The Fury has been dropped. They want the fight instead. And Sibby, looking for damage in the back, forces Sotos into an early ultimate, and Sotos gets counted zero value in that one as Sibby does a good job removing him from the fight. Unstable Vortex finds Rotwin. He ends up transforming, and Ferrocrick the target. He stuck around too long.
Oh, sick!
Does hide for a while inside the portal. Caspanify gets Rotwin, and Ferrocrick still draws breath. This is another 3-for-0.
Ferricrick gets dropped to 20% before the fight starts, goes into the enemy red buff, shotgun blasts Sodos into his chest,
In the
leaving
ultimate.
only a hole, a cavity, by the way, and then walks away, portals the floor, and avoids Lestimic's ultimate himself. Clean Yanis play from the Chaos team results in a one-team fight, easily 3-0, and a Gold Fury. Clay Soldiers now 5,000 gold in the lead. They're running away with it.
Yeah, and a comical, absurd 10,000 experience. That's the kind of thing you never really see, that the Gold and XP are this far apart. And it's the middle of the map, man. They were not able to keep up with Sarah Gazek and Ferricrick this time around. And in particular, I think Roulat had a miscalculation in how he started this game and wasn't really able to keep up with it. So now it's pretty dominantly in Clay Soldier's favor. And I mean, and what do you say about Ferricrick? Elite players, when they don't have Aegis up, they make their own. If you're Yana, I said you could just port to the ground. And that's exactly what he did. Bought some time and was able to get out of danger long enough for his team to help. And Sodos didn't get to do much in that fight, right? I mean, he ulted basically to run, and it didn't even get to work in that regard.
No, he made it about 3 shuffles away because, you know, he's like a lizard or something, and immediately dies because Spanify, in a little bit of trouble, goes up in the air. Yeah, where are you going to land? On Sodos? All right. Yeah, it worked.
Oh, looks like Hispanify can make his own Aegis as well. Jumps into the wall. Fear no evil, and Sodos deleted once again. A fight where he gets 0 value. The next target going to be Rotwin, though. Can they keep up the chase? The slow is there. The threshold as well. They know where he lands, and it's right into a portal. One of Fafnir's great weaknesses is meant to be his greatest strength. He makes his way back towards the tier 2. They are going to lose Pyromancer, though, for this. That's something to think about, you know, if you're Clay Soldiers.
Yeah, think about it for half a second as you barrel on down towards that tier 2 tower. Fire Giant, on the other hand.
This can't happen.
Yeah, Sibby's there, though. It's not gonna happen, Finch. Instead, though, nice try. Tier 2 tower gonna go the way of the Chaos team. Take a peek at the builds across the board is what I would say if Sibby wasn't taking the fight.
And he is indeed taking the fight. Roulat dropped the ultimate and ran.
Dude,
that is the exact PIMDOS.
Get out of there!
Cajun and Sibby just chase. Tough, bro. A nice one for Sibby as he takes care of Roulat. Now let's take Phoenix. Big siege. Rotwin all alone saying, squad, please, I need some assistance. Crush is used. Does not quite connect. Rotwin caught inside the root, and it's time for Hispanify to find the autos. Cannot Rotwin allowed to evade capture, but Sodos cannot. For some reason, there is a target on my man's back, and he cannot get away from it.
No.
There is the portal. No escape for Toddy. And has this just turned into a game in? There are still tons of towers up. That means this Titan is healthy. Fear no evil buys them time, though. And I think it just might be Mifflin Clay Soldiers keep up the chase, the hunt, and the pressure, despite Lestimic's best efforts, and they find a 2-0.
Normally, I'd have to do some analysis here, man. Pretty hard to say. I guess the one thing you could look at on the side of Just F6 that may have held them back ever so slightly was that bottom of the damage chart, Scylla. Yeah, man, they got out-routed, they got outplayed, they got outsmarted, and they, that's it. That's really it.
Yeah, and congrats to Clay Soldiers, man. A dominant set there from them, a well-earned victory. Miff and I are going to stew on it for a bit, but we'll have the desk for you on the other side of this break.
we'd be doing just F6 a favor if we were to forget game number 2 here. Unfortunately, Gore, we cannot do that. We have to discuss the 20-minute rout that was game number 2 here. Clay Soldiers just walk away with it. Look, you've got a hard job here too as well. Mifflin did his best to break down what goes wrong there. Everything is kind of the answer. If you explain the game of SMITE and how the game of SMITE can be lost, here you go. That's game number 2 here.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I pull out of this one is that at the end of the day, you have to look at where your Scylla's damage numbers are. And if it is literally anything below the top 4 in the game, they're not doing their job.
Right.
And then and there's more to it, right? Maybe that's on Sotos for not hitting abilities. Maybe it's on Rotwin and Lestimics for not creating enough space for him, and peeling in that case, because, you watch that last highlight, there wasn't a whole lot for Sotos to do there other than die, and I feel like that was just the case for a lot of this game. Whereas Farrakrick, Yanis just got to showcase exactly what he can do. First off, as Finch said, as I saw in chat, he can walk through walls. That's pretty solid, especially for getting him out of there. But for a lot of these moments, being able to get in, shotgun blast people, run away after all that damage is dealt, hey, it's all pretty solid for him. And he had a lot of solid ults as well. He just played so cleanly throughout all of this. Narrow dodges all around. And it just looked good. 5-0-7 there. I think the mid laner far and above outplayed his opponent, who was 0-5-1.
Yes.
Sibi also had a really great game, even though Lestimics was able to do a little bit. And Saraga had a much better jungle game than Roulat did.
Well, it's just big initiation there for Clay Soldiers. And that was something we were concerned about for Sotos and the Scylla there. Bottom damage in the game. And, of course, to reiterate, Gore, that stat doesn't always tell the entire story. It's easy to say, all right, Sotos, Scylla, lowest damage in the game, and you're just assuming, Sotos had a horrific game there. The pieces around this Scylla weren't as consistent as some of the pieces we saw at the SPL level. The Athenas, the Najas, the instant kind of guaranteed lockdown to get those abilities off felt a little more conditional here on this team. So this is really an interesting, I think, couple set of games here for Just F6, where the core of a couple of their drafts, Gore, I think, looked good, and then there were just 1 or 2 picks that kind of went off the rails there towards the end, and so while obviously, strategy, all that, you kind of have to mesh that and prove that to win some games here in this league. Just F6, unfortunately, have not been able to do so. We do now have a 4-way tie up top, but maybe adjusting some of those picks and bans gets Just F6 into the win column here shortly. But over here in Europe, how fun is this to watch? Elysium, Snake Hunters, Pandemonium, and Clay Soldiers all tied for first place. Obviously, the tiebreakers, head-to-head, all that sort of stuff at play, but we'll keep it simple here. 4 teams at 2-1 in the EU SCC. This has been an absolute blast to watch, Gordon, and I imagine this level of competition will continue on. Unfortunately, that's it for this week in EU. Got one more North American SCC game. That'll happen tomorrow before the SPL kicks off. Same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Fishies versus Tiburones will round out this week in the SCC. Goremizer, that's it for today in the SCC, though. We do have some great SPL games over the horizon. Oni Warriors versus Jade Dragons to start off, and then the Bolts versus the Scarabs yet again. Hey, Katie, welcome into broadcast. So fantastic, where you've got such a great setup over there. The spouse, the dogs, they can all come in and join the show. But talk to me a little bit. This Oni Warriors versus Jade Dragons matchup, maybe the matchup of the weekend.
Man, I think this is the one I'm most in for. Look, I'll also admit I'm a little nervous after the way the Titans came out. I was really excited to watch the Titans, and then that didn't quite go the way you would have expected, right? So, this is one that I'm a little nervous because I have a lot of high expectations for these teams. The Dragons, for people who haven't watched, your Ghost Gaming team from last year, looked really, really solid, but they pick up Herwin. They have Kabam as a coach as well. I think that team is going to look really good, although PBM has said it has a tendency of losing the first couple of sets. I think if we roll back to last year, that's probably true there as well. So maybe they don't show up the way they want to. And the Oni Warriors, you take 2 halves of 2 great teams and stick them together. Theoretically, you still end up with a really great team. I'm excited to see what they can do as they mesh together.
Yeah, theoretically, that's what we thought about the Titans, and they still are going to be a very good team, I think. Just a very rough start. So, hope for some more competitive games today in the SPL. That starts up in, 28 minutes from now, 1 p.m. Eastern
Sure.
time. The SPL will kick off for this Saturday. Oni Warriors versus Jade Dragons, Bolts versus Scarabs will round out this Saturday in the SPL. Stick around. SPL up next.